Hi, I'm Jack.
Hi, I'm Rob.
Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to the podcast Crohn's and Ulcerative Colitis, How to Spell Them, and Other Problems.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crohn's and Colitis, How to Spell It, and Other Problems podcast. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it? This is episode 1, and we're just going to set the scene a little bit on what we're going to try and do with this podcast moving forwards. We've got some episodes lined up, but first of all, we wanted to talk about who we are and why we decided to run this podcast. The first instance of it between us, we're going to do, I think we've got about 5 or 6 podcasts lined up that we're going to run. And then if people like it, we'll probably carry on after that. So we'll start with who are we? I'm not going to start with me. That sounds really self-indulgent. So I'm going to go to you, Rob. I'm going to go, who are you, Rob? And what are you doing here?
So why am I here? That's a rather big question, isn't it? I think beyond this podcast, but my name is Rob Bevan. I am a chiropractor and I run a ciropractic clinic down in Cirencester. I had ulcerative colitis for 10 years and ended up with elected to have a permanent ileostomy back in October 2022, I think. So kind of just 18 months or so ago. And around that time, there really wasn't a lot of information around why I did it or when I was searching for answers. So discussing with these two, we kind of came up with an idea to have a kind of a patient-facing information gathering podcast where people who were like me, who didn't quite know where to go, didn't quite know where to get any answers, could turn to find the answers that, that I had or find the answer to many questions that I had, if that makes sense.
Mm. And probably still have.
Yeah, and still have, yeah. So we put our heads together and came up with this idea as a podcast, and mostly it's the brainchild of Tim, I think, who came up with this idea in the first place. So I'll hand over to Tim then and ask, who are you, Tim?
Yeah, so my name's Tim, physiotherapist, however, currently working for a medtech company, trained. Well, no, actually, scratch that. I was suffer from Crohn's. I've been diagnosed for 20 years. Had crikey, hang on, where are we? In 2009, had an ileostomy which was reversed about after 9 months, and then in a weird quirk of fate, had a colostomy put in about six weeks after Rob, yes, very similar to sort of Rob's story there, where be looking for information, and we obviously spoke quite a lot at the time, sort of asking each other lots of different questions and what we'd found from our own clinicians, which had told us, and just felt that there was an opportunity to give sort of quote real advice instead of the pessimistic forums, which we found often was a pessimistic story at times, or conversely, if you look on social media, it was the classic social media, everything's good, everything's great, and there wasn't really much in between. So that's where sort of the idea came, where given that quote real story behind ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, and then potentially surgical interventions, really. So that's me. Been diagnosed with Crohn's for 20 years. Had one ileostomy reversed, and then currently living with a colostomy, which will be made permanent. I've been scheduled in waiting to be scheduled in for the final surgery, which is some point in the next 6 to 12 months. Don't know yet, but yeah, that's me.
Great. And that leaves me to the odd one out, doesn't it? I have nothing wrong with my bladder and bowel system, but I'm also a physio, a bit like you, Tim. My specialty, though, is rheumatology. So it leads me to this sort of weird part of this podcast where I'm friends with you two, but have no relation to inflammatory bowel disease other than professionally. It makes up a bit of my work, and I spend a lot of time interested in inflammation. So my sort of clinical skill set overlaps quite significantly. And interestingly, I suppose one of the reasons I think hopefully you got one of the reasons you two got me on here is because you like listening to me. But you both have come to me at different times with questions about joints and backs and medical questions, which is sort of an interesting, makes us a bit of an interesting trio, really. I think with our backgrounds, I don't know of another set of three people with both the clinical experience and the personal experience of these conditions. So hopefully that will lead us for these interesting podcasts. As to why I'm here, I suppose it's I was thinking this morning about how I might answer this question. It was like I feel like I'm the kid with the football who gets invited because I've got all the editing software for the audio and stuff. But no, why am I here really is I think when I speak to my patients who come and see me, that it's such a poor understanding of what's happening to them, such a poor understanding of their symptoms, and how that relates potentially to being unwell, or even in my case relates to their musculoskeletal system, so their joints or their back. So I'm seeing people obviously primarily because their back or their joints hurts, and then I'm asking them about their bowel habits and things, and there just doesn't seem to be an awareness of these conditions, which are relatively common. They're not super rare, and I think awareness needs to be better. So that's why I'm here, is sort of try and get that education out there as well.
Brilliant,
lovely stuff. So I suppose we sort of covered the aim of the podcast a little bit, is try and educate people a bit. Rob, give us an example of a question that you had that went unanswered for a long time, and where we're going to try and deal with that.
I think the biggest one for me now, or the one I had before surgery, was when is the time to get surgery? Like, at what point are surgeons or doctors or gastroenterologists saying, okay, this, man or woman now needs surgery? Where do we cross that line? Is it always a personal decision where you're thinking, my life is now so affected that I, want the next step? Is it a medical decision? Now, obviously there are emergencies that need surgery. You can have a, toxic megacolon, you can rupture a bowel due to inflammation. So there are times when surgery is done as an emergency, but outside of that, and it's more of this kind of elective, pre-booked in surgery, who pulls the trigger on that? Is that the patient? Is it the doctor? From personal experience, I had, lots of doctors, gastroenterologists saying, at some point in the future, it's probably, this might be on the cards, or it might be time to start, getting your head around that, or, reaching out to people that have had same surgeries to kind of get your head around it a little bit more. But no one ever said, this is the time to me. And it was me kind of actually putting the trigger on it, and me paying to go and see a private surgeon to actually say, what are my options here? And that's something I still recommend now to a lot of people, is if you can, have the luxury to do that, is go and see someone just to have an outline of what the options are. That doesn't mean you need to have the surgery privately, but just so you understand from his or her perspective, where are we on that time frame? And he said to me and said, yeah, okay, so we can't do this surgery because of where your inflammation is. We can't do this one. This is pretty much your only option. I wouldn't recommend option A, B, C, or D. This is the direction you're headed in. I would rather do it at this time rather than this time, because if you're so unwell, it makes, healing more of a challenge. So he outlaid this whole plan for about half an hour as to where his head was at with regards to my future. And it was such a, eye-opening journey for me to then walk away and say, okay, cool. So this is probably going to be the next 12 months. When's it going to be a good time for me to have it? Can I book this in? Can I schedule it? Where am I at? So that was the biggest reason for me. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to jump on here, was to help distill that information really to the Gen Pop and to people who are in similar situations to where I was 3 years ago.
I think for me as well, like you say, dispelling that information to the general population. Like I said, I work with people who have, especially when I was in the NHS a while ago, I worked with maybe 25% of my patients had an inflammatory bowel disease, and I still don't really know what the signs and symptoms are. The most I've learned is from you two telling me what's going on. And so and that's, I'm in a more exposed part of the population. Like, I'm seeing these people and understanding, what's going on, and yet I still am not that well aware of it. So I think if we can give that a lot of that information, that'd be really good. What about you, Tim? What's your current unanswered question? Let's go with that. Your current unanswered question that we're going to get someone on to answer.
I mean, I think there was obviously very similar to Rob, and we'll obviously talk in detail with when we cover a bit more of my story. Like, I was trying to put off stuff for a long time because I didn't want that finality. So I'm my own worst enemy at times. But like, I think as I've got older and sort of learned more about myself, I think what I would have definitely benefited is kind of very similar to what Rob was saying, but more from the medical perspective with Crohn's, of like this is plan A. If plan A doesn't work and that's the threshold that is considered failed, then plan B, then we'll look at this. Because what I used to get sort of blasé with is, oh, I'm being monitored, which I was, but then like, when do I go and bother somebody as sort of failed? And I think that in hindsight would have been beneficial, of those sorts of things. But then, really, for me, for sort of my stage at the journey, sort of, and we'll go into a little bit more detail, but I've had quite a few complications post surgery. Nothing major, but like, I think it's fair to say, and Rob can agree or disagree. His was fair, because it was more planned. His was more conventional and textbook, and he's had much more. He's back doing more of this, whereas I'm nowhere near my fitness goals and all this sort of stuff. So I think sort of looking into how do I get back doing all of those things. I'm back at work full time, starting to do exercise, but like reintegrating into quote normal life. Because at the minute I'm just finding my feet, and there's lots of trial and error, but is the research, is the guidance beyond do what you feel right, and it'd be interesting to know where, and I know we've got a few people lined up to try and hopefully answer those questions, and hopefully we can sort of unpick that ourselves with our own lived experience, but also our own clinical experience as well. But that would be, for me, the sort of process that I'd like to sort of unravel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a relative outsider looking in, for someone who we're going to be crass in this podcast, aren't we? Because we're going to talk a lot about poo. But for someone who goes to the toilet and goes for a poo once a day and have done for the last 37 years, give or take, except for the odd occasion, the learning from you two, the absolute impact on your lives, it's so, it doesn't cross my mind. Like, I've been for a poo today, that's fine. Like, I won't go for a poo until tomorrow. And the absolute impact on your life, do you know what I mean though? Like, it's so not anything to me. Like, it is nothing.
Yeah.
It's just so like, it's like breathing. It's nothing. And then to hear you two, for the period of time, not even just like, if someone gets the shits, you eat some dodgy chicken and you get this, that's really bad. But then to for a day or two, then to hear you guys over years have that serious impact on your lives, it just still is just unbelievable to me that you guys have had to put up with that, and the journeys that you guys have been on.
And that's the way I put it to people is, we have been like, can you do this thing tomorrow morning? Can you, where I was always really bad in the morning. So before 12 o'clock, after 12 o'clock, I was kind of mostly, unless I was really, really bad, If I was going beyond 12 o'clock, that's when I knew I was kind of ready to be hospitalized. So, before 12 o'clock. And the way I put it to people who were like, oh, can you do this in the morning? Can we get an early flight? I'd be like, imagine that today you ate some dodgy chicken and tomorrow you knew you were going to have the shits for 3 hours. How would you feel about having a taxi pick you up tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock? Like, where would your head be at with that kind of anxiety? You'd be, okay, where can I stop along the motorway to find a bathroom? Where can I do all of that? And that's the bathroom anxiety, whatever you want to call it. Have I just coined that term? I'm not sure. But that anxiety around that of, oh, where can I do this? I knew all the restaurants which had bathrooms you could dip into, which pub you'd be able to go into. I knew the toilets pretty well at all the service stations to the various airports I'd go to on the way back, and that was it. And you know what it's like, and that's what it was. And it wasn't just that; it was the time, it was the fear, and the stress around it. We know the impact of stress and cortisol spiking on inflammation. So there's that whole thing, and I was very lucky that I could adapt my working life, so I didn't see patients before 12 o'clock. So I might have to cover reception and stuff, but that was a lot easier. I could, go to and from as I pleased. But the actual, I didn't see patients before 12 o'clock for years, and it was just, I'm lucky that I could set it up that way. But so many others can't, and they're stuck in jobs where they can't nip out to the bathroom every 15 minutes, or as soon as you left the bathroom, have to go back in again, which is rather frustrating.
It's mental. It's mental looking back. Like you were saying there, Rob, with planning your journey if you had to go in the morning, and I'd be planning from the night before, like when I ate, 100%. When I drank. If I wasn't particularly well controlled, I'd take some loperamide like in the evening, and then the morning just to try and clog me up to make sure that I got through, particularly if I was doing a flight. And I'm sort of watching your face, Jack, to what I'm about to say now. Is I would carry spare underwear and trousers in my bag, in my rucksack, just in case. Still do to this day.
I totally believe it. And I have some empathy in everybody in the world's been caught short occasionally, but it's the repetitive duration of it, and maybe we'll get into it at some point. Like, my life is similar, but in a completely different cause. So I have some empathy from that point of view with this hyper planning situation and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, it's that relentlessness of it, the relentlessness of every day. Imagine you're ill every day, like, and I think that for me is from you two, that's really opened my eyes, and I really want to get that across to people. And we were saying just before we started recording that we want this to be more about people's experience than pure, like, we'll get clinicians on, we'll talk clinically about some stuff, but really get that experience out to help people who are either experiencing these conditions or live with people or interact with people who are experiencing these conditions, so they can understand better.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's a really useful topic for people to talk about, because these are things that aren't really spoken about. And we raise awareness for Crohn's and colitis, but that doesn't mean how can I plan bathroom breaks better? It's more about raising awareness. People have heard of the condition, but actually the intricacies of day-to-day management of it, that's what's I think that we can shine a light on really well from lived experience, from us, from other patients, from other people who've been through the same thing, from family members, as you said, and then from the medical side as well, which I think is going to be really beneficial.
I agree, and I don't know whether you found this, Rob, and I don't know even if you did this clinically. I know I did, but if I had anybody with a similar condition, I'd go, I get it, I've got it, and the look of relief when somebody would go, you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm going through, and I think that is often the case with because it's I hate that I'm going to say this, like a taboo topic, or I have to plan because I don't want to be caught short, or I've socially, it used to do my head in when putting my patient hat on, where I go, I'm 37, where I was 36 when I was struggling massively, like, I can't control my own bowels. I remember having those like thoughts, like, I'm 36, like, my 3-year-old nephew's got better bowel control than me. Like, that was genuinely what would go on in my head, and I think that sort of understanding that people are in similar predicaments. Once medically things get better, strategies, all those sorts of things. When you talk to people with similar conditions and they mention similar things, like, Rob, you talking about the toilet radar, toilet map, whatever you want to call it, like the number of times we'd go into a new establishment and friends or family would go, "Tim, where's the toilet?" And I'd go, "I've never been here before." They'd go, "Yeah, but you know where it is. Like, you'll know, you'll just know where it is." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I think it's over in that far corner." Like, because you're constantly on a pivot, like trying to think, right, if I suddenly get the urge to go, where do I need to run off to? It's just those little things that, until you don't, like now, because of the stoma, like I'm not having to think about those things. It's creating that headspace that it's suddenly got more energy, like to actually process other things than where's the bloody toilet.
The only good thing that came out of this was my friends and family used to always laugh at us was we always got any room with an ensuite. So ever we stayed in a hotel, we rented a house, anywhere, we always had the nicest room. And my friends always used to joke about it. They was like, "Oh yeah, Rob can have that room." That was always it, because wherever that was, I always got the poo suite toilet, which worked well. Don't get that anymore.
Don't get that anymore. I just want to interject at this point and say, like, we want to put a positive spin on this as well. Like, I think the journeys that you two are on now are so much more positive than prior to maybe a few months ago or a few years ago. And Rob, particularly when we talk to you about your running and that kind of stuff. And Tim probably just not being hospitalized on steroids all the time.
This time last year, I was still in hospital.
Exactly. And I think the other reason I think you two are really good for this is you've done pretty much all the aspects of the journey so far. I mean, Tim, you're not quite there yet, as you said, but like, you guys have been through to pardon the pun again, the shitty times, and then into this positive upward set of circumstances. And I really want us to focus on that, so that people who are still in the quote unquote shitty times think, okay, I understand that there is some light at the end of that tunnel.
Oh yeah, massively. And I would agree. There was this time last year was in and out, as you both know, in and out with repeated infections, complications, all that sort of stuff. To then fast forward to now, literally starting my second week of quote dream job. Like, things can massively turn around, and it's only the final stages of my personal health journey that I'm going through. But like, if you'd spoken to me you guys spoke to me this time last year, it was totally different circumstances.
No, totally agree. I think that brings us really nicely to the plan for the show. So we're calling this episode 1, or I don't know, prequel, prelude, whatever we want to call this. I don't know. I haven't quite decided on that yet. But then we've got we talked to I've totally blanked on his surname, Tim, so you're gonna have to help me out here.
McFarland.
Well, that's it, Mike McFarland. The first one, which we've already recorded before we even record this, is that we talked all about the diagnostic journey, which was really fascinating. So that really early part, we covered loads of ground from initial symptoms to actually sort of testing and that kind of thing, which is really good. And then the next one that I want to do is what I've titled All About Tim. So we're going to get really into the weeds of Tim and his personality and tear him to bits. I think that's going to be a good idea.
Lucky you two.
Lucky us, yeah. Lucky us. No topic off the table, Tim.
No.
And then you've got your surgeon lined up, Tim. We're gonna ask them some questions. Then we're gonna do the same thing to Rob. We're gonna talk all about Rob, tear him to pieces, and then go on from there. We've got some other podcasts planned about exercise, and then get some more people in with IBD to tell us their experiences. So I'm excited about doing the recordings, to be honest. I think it's going to be good fun. The first one certainly was fun. That was really good. We did just over an hour and it went in the blink of an eye. So looking forward to putting that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great.
Can't wait.
Should we wrap it up there then, lads?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Excellent.
I think that was a really good overview, and I think a good summary of what's to come.
Awesome. Just to tie some loose ends, we will have an email address. It's not set up yet. So have a wherever you're listening or watching, it will be in the what's called the show notes, just underneath the video or the audio. We'll put an email address in. So would encourage anybody listening to get in touch with any questions or topics that they want us to cover. We'll see how we go. We might be able to do little miniature ones where if people have specific questions for Rob or Tim, we can answer those. We'll do that. And do what we can. Anybody who has particular people they think would be really fascinating to talk to, we'd also really like to do that. Anybody who's anywhere near Cirencester and fancies seeing Rob as a cut for some chiro, then chiro treatments, he's pretty good at that. That'd be really good. Do get in touch with him.
I really am. I'm great. So.
He is really good. Yeah. The best chiro in that. In fact, aren't you chiropractor of the year currently?
Apparently I am. Yes, I did win an award. So that was a bit of a
yeah.
I think it's more for like raising awareness and stuff.
It's because of your quality, mate. It's because of your quality. So yeah. We'll put your clinic in the show notes there as well, in case anybody is nearby. And yeah, other than that, we'll crack on creating these shows. And so I know what we need to do. We need to say sign up to stuff. So you need to subscribe, click like buttons, leave reviews and ratings, please, to people. That'd be really great. And yeah, otherwise, we'll record some more episodes for people to listen to.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for listening, and we hope to catch you all on the next episode.
Woo.